You haven't seen me on YouTube a lot in the last couple months because I was working very hard at a law firm that I recently lost my job from. And I did not want to talk about that on the internet or anywhere. So the same day that I lost that job, I went to my second job that I had, and the boss there told me that the department that I was working in was being shut down. And so when you're in a moment like that, you don't want to tell anybody anything. And you got to keep it strong for your kids. You definitely don't want to tell your boomer dad. But I wrote out 20 video ideas, and I couldn't pick which one, and I rolled a 20-sided dice, and it landed on this video for the first one. I was like, really? Because I really wanted to come and do this video once I already had a plan, and I already had a steady income again, and I could give you the comeback story about how I was down and out, and how I came back, and everything's good. But I guess God just wants me to speak in my brokenness, so, I guess that's what I'm going to speak from. The first thing I want to talk about, though, with this is, so that night, when I'd learned that I'd lost both those jobs, I was holding my newborn son, who's only been born like a month ago, and I was walking around because this baby will not sleep unless he's being held and walked around, which means, nobody is sleeping. It's terrible. So either my wife or I has to be awake a lot of the time for him to go to sleep. He's finally gotten a little better, but at this time period, it was like that. And I was listening to the audio Bible of the book of Matthew. And Matthew has never spoken to me in my life like it has in this period of my life. I've been meditating on it, trying to memorize it, at least in outline form, and listening to the Sermon on the Mount, and he's saying things like, who of you by worrying can add 1 hour to your life? And it's just so intense, and it's true. And there's other parts of the sermon you can argue with more. It's like, well, birds don't always have food, and, I guess the lilies are always clothed, but whatever. That particular argument, who of you by worrying can add 1 hour to his life, that's a great point. And then he finishes up his sermon by talking about you need to build your house on the stone because the storms are coming. And that's something that Jesus doesn't say, well, if the storms come. He says, for when there are storms, because there's going to be storms. You're going to have a friend die. You're going to have a relationship end. You're going to have friendship end. You're going to lose a job. You're going to fail at life. You're just going to have to get back up. And what do you have to stand on unless you have Christ? You have nothing. You have sand, and it gets blown away by those storms. When I was in undergrad, I failed out of business school, and I got so depressed that I wanted to take my own life. Fortunately, I've not been that depressed in this season of my life, but that's because success is an idol for me. It is a house made of sand, and it's kind of comforting, but also not comforting in a way. When I go, God, I failed at this, what now? He goes, it's really not about you. I make it all about me and my success and me being great, and it's not about me.
You must let go of your feelings of shame if you want your anger to go away.
But I don't feel any shame at all. I'm as proud as ever.
Prince Zuko, pride is not the opposite of shame, but its source. True humility is the only antidote to shame.
And so in that sense, it really doesn't matter when I fail at something, and it is just an opportunity to get better. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to talk about is storms. The last thing I want to say about storms is whenever Jesus is walking on the water, he tells Peter, come out to me. And Peter is able to walk on water briefly. He walks on water for a little while, but it's when he starts looking at the wind and the waves, that's when he sinks. And so if you're in a storm right now, keep your eyes locked on Jesus, and that's how you walk on water. And sometimes you'll look at a wave and you'll sink a little bit, but just shoot back. When you wake up at 3 a.m. and you're worried about providing for your kids and being a good dad and holding it together, will I be a success? Am I a loser? Am I going to end up under a bridge beating a bean can with a spoon and having a pet rat? That's when you can wake up and you just focus on Christ, and he can give you the peace that goes beyond understanding. He really does, and you're able to go back to sleep. My second thing I want to talk about is always underreact when you're in a storm. Now, what do I mean by that? When I was in my 20s, I had a job, and I thought that I was being fired. I really wasn't, and I panicked, and I told everybody, and I emailed everybody, and I was crying and yelling and burning bridges, and it was all so stupid. It ended up causing so much damage. And so, in both of the situations, when I lost both of these jobs, with the first one at the law firm, I was very kind, very polite, just did my work for that day and then left. And then whenever the other boss told me that that department was being shut down, I said, okay. And then I was praying in my head, you know what, God, I'm going to trust you. And this is scary, but I'm going to trust you. And saying, I trust you, God, doesn't mean as much when everything's going well. Because even a house built on sand can stand up when there's no storm. But when there's a storm, that's when you go, okay, I'm going to trust you, God. And it actually means something. And I stayed super calm. I didn't overreact. And there was, my wife and maybe a couple friends I told. And I told them not to tell anybody. And I just kept doing that job, even though I thought the department was shut down. And then it ends up later, it hasn't even shut down. I think it's very rare in your life that you can just talk yourself out of a storm. Like you can't just throw words at a problem and make the problem go away. And it makes me want to compare horses and cows. Horses hate discomfort. And if you poke them, they'll jolt in some direction. Or if they get stung by a bee, they might trample you. Cows, on the other hand, they're just so calm. And you push them and they don't even want to move. And they'll just sit and lean on a fence, And so you want to be more like a cow than a horse. You don't want to just react and explode. And there's scripture that backs this up. James 3:2-8 is basically talking about if you can keep your tongue in check, your words in check, you can keep everything in check. And that's so true. And when you're in a doubt, you don't need to say anything. Just be quiet. James 1:26, those who consider themselves religious and do not keep a tight rein on their tongues deceive themselves, and their religion is worthless. And so you want to have this discipline of control over your tongue, but then when in doubt, because sometimes you have control over it, but you don't know whether to speak or not, just don't speak. So Proverbs 21:23, those who guard their mouths and their tongues keep themselves from calamity. Guard it, or you will face calamity. And it's hard, I know, when you're younger, when you read something like that, to know what it means. It means the 20-year-old version of me who goes and blah, 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 and causes so much damage, instead of just staying calm, focusing on Christ in the storm, breathing deep, just doing the best you can. Proverbs 10:19, sin is not ended by multiplying words, but the prudent hold their tongues. Notice that it doesn't say sin goes away with the multiplication of words. It doesn't say the prudent let their tongues go crazy. It says sin is not removed by the multiplication of words, and the prudent hold their tongue. So what are my plans going forward? I want to do ministry more. I mean, the good thing about being a lawyer is you can't ever get totally fired because I still have my law license.
You're human.
Barely. I'm a lawyer.
If I can find clients, there's not a problem there. I still don't want to do that all the time, though. I want to do ministry. And I've wanted to do ministry for a long time. And so I'm going to be applying for part-time jobs. One I still have that I thought that I had lost. I'm going to apply for more jobs. I want to kind of get into some media stuff. And then I also want to put more time into my YouTube channel. So I've created a Buy Me a Coffee. And if you feel led to give me money, then go ahead. I'm going to also make way more content than I used to. At least that's my plan right now. And so if you ever find yourself laughing so hard you're crying, give me $5 or something. You can give me a little tip for that. Anyway, that's where I'm at right now. Focus on Christ. Hold your tongue. Stay calm. And just do the best you can, I guess.